Thank you. We've heard presentations from both of our debaters on the existence of God and the non-existence of God, and both of them stuck perfectly to their time limits. So we've started as hopefully we mean to carry on. And now the floor is open. We've got exactly 1 hour. It's 7:21 and we've got till about 8:20 to take your questions and to hear the answers from our debaters. I'm going to try to be fair, so I'll try to pick from across the hall, and also I'd like to give equal opportunity for those who have religion and those who don't have religion, so I want to make sure that everybody gets equal chance to speak. So as we had the non-existence of God as the first presentation, we'll start with somebody who on the opposite side for the first question. So somebody of religion who wants to ask the first question, raise your hands up. Okay. Brother, do you want to just come down to the end? And anybody on the other side of the argument, so non-religion, wants to ask a question. All right. So if you just go there for the next question. Thank you.
My question is directed to Guy Otten. I don't know much about humanism, but I know that you believe that your own moral code is supposed to be guided by what humans think is moral by consensus, but as we know, this doesn't always work. An extreme example of this would be Nazi Germany. What we see around the world right now is a lot of hatred for certain groups of people, and the human morality isn't always unflawed. So a consensus of what humans believe is moral isn't always the best way to guide your life. So what would be your response to that as a humanist?
Thank you for that question. Yep. I've got to say that I prefer humanist morality, secular morality, based on human rights and respect for people and equality, to the morality of both the Bible and the Quran, which permits slavery, which provides for the stoning and persecution of gays and apostates, which treats women as second-class citizens, and throughout the Quran you'll see degradation of non-believers throughout. Almost in every surah you'll find it, and I find that morally unacceptable. Humanist morality is based on human values, and we share, as I mentioned in my talk briefly, common human values based on compassion, because we are social animals. And out of that we have to develop consensus, and intersubjectivity is the word is often used. It's not objective in the religious sense, but it is objective in the sense that we can't just choose our own. We have to live in a society with common standards. And we see that all over the world working quite well. Of course there are things that go wrong. Hitler was a Catholic, but he had his own religion. He worshipped himself. That's my view of it. I think Stalin and Pol Pot and Mao Zedong probably as well. So that's my answer there.
I'll let the Sheikh respond, and any questions that direct to him, I'll let you respond to them as well.
Just a correction to that. Stoning is not found in the Quran. Killing of the apostate is not found in the Quran, and additional to that, slavery is not endorsed by the Quran. The verses relating to slavery that are revealed in the Quran were there to give human rights to slaves that were already existing in the Arabian Peninsula. So the Quran did not legislate slavery. The Quran, in fact, in the books, the books of jurisprudence of Islam, you find chapters on freeing slaves, but you find not a single chapter on capturing slaves. So this is something that needs to be corrected. The stoning and the killing of the apostate is found in hadith literature and in the books of jurisprudence. There's no denial of that being found, but a person should be precise when quoting from, meaning if I quoted anything from humanist philosophy, I should be precise in how I quote humanist philosophy. But with regard to morality, we would say God is the one who determines, meaning through divine revelation. If there was no divine revelation, then humans are not tasked to follow any divine revelation. So if someone believes there is a God but there is no divine revelation, they are not obliged to follow that revelation. But once they recognize that there is a revelation, then God is the one who determines human morality, what is permitted and what is not permitted. And this is how we would also define evil, meaning evil is defined by the divine, meaning humans cannot, because otherwise a one-way road in certain cultures may be deemed as good and in others it would be deemed as bad. But who gives the final say would be the divine.
Okay, thank you. We're going to take a question there. Is there anybody from a religious perspective wants to ask a question afterwards? Right. We'll take this question after that one.
I have a few possible, but I'll go with this one. You ascribe emotional responses, this is a question for the Sheikh, you ascribe emotional responses to your brain and your heart. You say you believe in God with your brain and in your heart. How can you ascribe an emotional response to the heart when it's proven it's just a muscle pump to pump blood around the body? You can have a heart transplant and get somebody else's heart. Your thoughts and feelings wouldn't be the same. Humans have ascribed feelings to the heart because it is, a source of life in the body because it pumps blood. But you could just as easily ascribe emotions to your spleen or your kidneys or your liver because they perform life-sustaining functions. The brain is where the thoughts live and the ideations live. But so the notion that someone can believe something in their heart is just fallacious in its entirety.
Okay, the response to your question is, I did not say belief is known through the heart, I said knowing is through the heart. Now this is a way of stating something like if when you say, I had this feeling in my stomach. Why do we say I had this feeling in my stomach? Because when a person says, I feel this in my stomach, when you feel nervous, where do you get the feelings? In your stomach. So if a person feels nervous, they will feel that in their stomach. Likewise, if someone has love, where will those feelings transpire aside from the brain? This does not negate the brain. They will feel that love where in the heart. The heart may start beating fast. This is not deniable. Meaning, when you have certain feelings, the heart may start palpitating and you'll feel that in the heart, irrelevant to whether you've had a heart transplant or not. So when we say we feel love for God or anything else, that feeling of love is felt in the heart also. I'm not saying that the heart is a rational organ that you rationalize with the heart. No, I said you know with the mind and you know with the heart. So knowing with the mind goes hand in hand with knowing with the heart. You cannot separate the two. But even though it may be a interpretation of physiological responses, the feeling is felt in that particular organ, and this is human perception that many people cannot deny.
I'm going to let Guy respond to that, but just before I do, a question from a non-religious perspective. Do we have any? All right, you had a question, didn't you? So we'll come to you. We'll come to you next. Let's just get the response, and then we'll come to you.
I think the question about love and emotions was first raised by my learned friend Asrar, that in response to my suggestion that the natural world was all that we could understand and observe. And in fact, I think he's answered that point at all. He was suggesting that love is something you can't see or sense. He's just said you can feel the blood pumping through your heart. So therefore, love, together with all the other emotions, are part of the natural world that we can understand and sense. Thank you.
You can use that. Okay. Yeah, we'll take the question here.
It's about the morality. If you look at 30 years ago in the UK, Margaret Thatcher cracked down on homosexuality. Why is it widely endorsed now today, and what's changed? And what stops incest and bestiality in the future being morally acceptable? And the main question actually to both speakers is what makes most sense of the origin of the universe? What caused the first cause? I think that's the biggest question, because what caused the universe to exist? Why are we here today? How did we come about? So.
Okay, so the first one was around moral compasses changing over time, and the second one on first cause. So we'll kick off with you guys.
Yes, I think that our awareness of moral standards has improved over the last 30, 40, 50 years. That is my answer to that. And I actually think that that is progress. We now have a commitment to the equality, sexual and gender and equality with minorities and people with disability. This is a great step forward. So I have no problem with that.
So is incest acceptable?
No. Why should it be? It's nothing to do with incest. We're talking about equality. The fact that the limits of any moral changes are those that are agreed and acceptable to a society. Now, it so happens that the Pharaoh did actually marry his sister, I believe. So, it's not as if it's unknown. But in our society, we don't find that moral, and I don't see a problem with that. Shall I go on to the first cause?
The second one as well.
Now, the first cause is the old bogeyman, isn't it? We don't know. That is to say, human beings do not know how the Big Bang started, because because our scientific knowledge gives out at the point of the Big Bang. And therefore, to suggest that therefore God is an argument for ignorance. It's an argument from ignorance to actually go that far. We have to be honest and say we do not know, and it's wrong to guess.
Well, what caused the first cause?
I've just answered that question. We do not know. How? Those are very simple, very simple words. Do you understand them? We do not know, and it's wrong to try and guess.
Okay, let's see if Sheikh Asrar can tell me.
Okay, with regard to the first question regarding ethics and morality, with Islamic revealed law, with the revealed law, with the revealed law, Islamic law, the certain morals and ethics would stay the same, irrelevant to what age and time you may live in. So murder is wrong at all times. Likewise, rape is wrong at all times. Incest would be wrong at all times. So it's fixated. So we do not have a problem with that particular question. With regard to the next question, the first cause, without going on to God, because making the jump to God would entail a different set of arguments. We would need a different set of arguments to say a God with X, Y, and Z attributes. But that first cause having a cause would mean that that cause would also have a cause, and this would lead ad infinitum to an endless regression of causes. So we would have to stop at a point that the first cause would have to be an eternal cause, an uncaused cause, meaning that's the only way you stop the regression.
Okay, we've got a question here. If you wouldn't mind just coming down to the end so the volunteer can hold the mic. Do we have another question after this one? Yeah, Hamza, if you just want to come down here. And I'll come to you in a second.
Can you explain the rules again for the late comments?
Okay, just a reminder of the house rules before we take this question. So the rules relating to the questions. Please only ask questions, don't make speeches. Keep them short and keep them to the point, and please ask questions which are related to the topics that have been discussed this evening. And audience members may ask a maximum of one question each per debater. Okay.
So, Asrar mentioned about just then, murder is wrong at all times. And you were talking about why is the world in a bad state. So I kind of want to make a quick comment then. It's quite a question. So the reason, obviously in our faith, being a Christian, why we believe the world is in its state is because the Lord gave the earth as a dominion to mankind for them to reign and to take care of it. He gave us free will, and it's from our choices that we've basically brought in, bad things into the world.
And now the question, please.
Yeah, so the question is, so you mentioned murder is wrong at all times, but if you go to Surah Al-Ma'idah, right, it says here in verse 32, and now this is, it says, for that cause we decreed for the children of Israel that so whoever killeth a human being for other than manslaughter or corruption in the earth, it shall be if they've killed all of mankind, And who save one the life, they've saved all of mankind. Now that was ordained to the children of Israel, which are the Jews. And then if you read the next verse after that, yeah, the question's here now. So the next verse, 33, says, the only reward of those who make war upon Allah and His Messenger and strive of corruption in the land, they should be killed or crucified or have their hands and feet and alternate sides cut off or will be expelled out of the land. It says, such will be their degradation in the world, and in the hereafter theirs is be an awful doom. So after you've made that comment that murders is wrong all the time, what would your comment be about this here?
My response to you, that verse is in reference to legislation for rulers, that when that particular verse that you mentioned is regarding highway robbers and thieves, and the revelation of that verse was in light of that when they robbed certain sheep herders and they killed them and crucified them, then they were punished with the similar type of punishment for the government to carry out. This is a legislation for governments to stop murder. So because the children of Israel were given the law that a life for a life, the rulers were given the permission to take away the life of anyone who may have murdered. So capital punishment, that is the purpose of that particular verse.
Do you want to respond to that?
Yes, I mean, what's interesting about the Ten Commandments is, of course, we have thou shalt not kill, which is actually, it doesn't say thou shalt not commit murder, it just says thou shalt not kill, which sounds like an absolute prohibition. And yet, within a few verses or chapters, God is sending the children of Israel out to murder other tribes and other people.
But with regard to that, guy, even with the Bible, and I believe you're Christian, even with the Bible needs to be taken in context with other verses. So God will say in the Bible, thou shalt not kill, but revelation would be sent to certain prophets that they were permitted to kill in certain instances in warfare. So the thou shalt not kill would, the exact meaning of thou shalt not kill would mean that thou shalt not kill unjustly. This is not my defense of the particular.
Oh, I thought it was. I was enjoying this.
But hermeneutics,
Christians and the Muslims ganging up together.
The hermeneutics of reading any text, like in the Bible in Kings, there is a mention regarding the children of Israel. God says to them, "You shall be cursed in the desert, and you shall eat from excrement." And people quote this to say, "Look, God is ordering them to eat excrement." But when you check Bible commentaries, the correct meaning of that is that when they were in the wild, they were forced to burn as fuel the dung of camels, and they would burn that as fuel, and they would make their food on that fuel. So if I were to quote that to a Christian priest, it would be totally out of context. So likewise, the verse that you mentioned is in reference to the rulers, that the rulers were permitted to kill highway bandits who had murdered. Likewise, the verse in the Quran which mentions amputation of the hand, that is an address to the rulers, not to everyone else.
Not now. We've got other questions that are, so we'll go there. The brother in the blue shirt after we take the question from here.
And there's a non-religious.
Yes, I'll come there in a second. Somebody here have a question? Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. Jazakallah khair for attending. And this question is directed to Guy, obviously. I've just walked in late, unfortunately, but I've walked into you quoting verses of the Quran, not even giving the reference, which I find extremely unacademic for somebody academic. So I wanted to know, what are your credentials when it comes to Islam? Have you studied Sarf, Nahu, Balagha, Mantiq, any of the sciences that I've just mentioned? And as you know, for someone academic, you're saying that the Quran states that, we treat women as second-class citizens, which I find offensive. You have no reference for that. So what is your epistemology when it comes to Islam? Because the epistemology for us is certainty. Yet you're not even certain about your narrative of Islam, let alone atheism. So where do you take your narrative from when it comes to quoting Islam? And for Shaykh Asrar, the question would be, is that do you feel that studying Ilm al-Kalam gives you a firm enough grounding to tackle atheism? Just to sort of ask you both that question as well in the own way.
Yeah, you're probably right in that I have made generalized statements about Islam which may well have come from the Hadith rather than the Quran, and I accept that criticism. But the other point you've made is about certainty, and I think this is more interesting because There was a guy called Plato who came up with a heresy called ideals and absolutes. He is responsible for a lot of this mischief. He came up with the idea that there is such a thing as an absolute, perfect God or perfect person, perfect chair. Those are his ideas, and those ideas were so brilliant that the Christians took them up and said, oh yeah, that's God, perfect, yeah. And later on, you Muslims have done the same. It is in fact a heresy in the sense it's a flawed approach to reality. There's no such thing as anything that is perfect. Not even your most beloved girlfriend. There isn't such a thing. If you think anything is perfect, love or truth or anything, you're already going, or certainty, you're already off the rails. We have to live with probabilities. We have to try and get to truth as far as we can, building on evidence and facts and assessments. That is a very interesting question, so thank you for that one. The other one, you're right.
Have you switched off when you said
Have you ever heard of a perfect cup of tea?
No.
Do you want to just, the brother mentioned ilm al-kalam, do you want to just mention what that is in response
With
to?
regard to ilm al-kalam is rational theology which developed in the first 100 years of Islam and further developed over in the second 200 years of Islam when Greek philosophy entered the Muslim world and Muslim theologians would defend the Quran with the rational basis. What you mentioned regarding Christianity having its roots in Greek philosophy, I would totally disagree with that, because Jesus, whether you read Jesus through the Quran or whether you read Jesus through the New Testament, you will find that Jesus' teachings, and in fact the Gospels, the 4 Gospels, you can buy the Bible with the red text for the speech of Jesus. You will find that Jesus' teachings actually do not have any rooting in Greek philosophy. In fact, they are totally distinct, even though Muslims have their disputes with Christians with regard to the non-tampering of the Bible, but the words of Jesus, you will find they have no root in Greek philosophy. So that would be, I would totally disagree with that.
Okay, thank you. We're going to take that question there, and then the lady here. Do we have another question on this side? Okay. Brother in the white shirt, and then we'll come to gentleman in the middle. There first, yeah.
It's just a question to Guy Otto. My question's partially answered, but I'm going to ask it anyway, but to both. If living in a probability that God exists or doesn't exist is basically what an atheist does, then do you not live your life in partial uncertainty? Live and die your whole life and all your kids' life and all their lives in partial uncertainty, or what's the purpose of life? And to Sheikh Asrar, can you elaborate more on how certain you are about Islam?
Okay, purpose of life.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting and actually critical question. I think this is at the centre of the difference in our worldviews. And that is that, yes, we do live all our lives, I submit, in uncertainty. We don't know whether we're going to be able to cross that road safely. We don't know whether we're going to get full marks in an exam. We do our best all the time. Everything is an effort to try and achieve a standard that's good enough, at least. That is the reality in science as well. Science is not an absolute system. It's a system that gathers the evidence, interprets it, and sometimes gets it wrong and has to revisit that and try again. But nevertheless, it has achieved over 500 plus years enormous results.
2 plus 2 will always be 4.
Mathematics is the creation of the human mind, like God. You know, you can have perfections and you can have absolutes in an invented world, right? Not in the real world. That's the point.
All right.
So the earth going around the sun is a certain fact, is it not? Meaning we would have certainty regarding the earth going around the sun, even though it's a scientific fact.
Yes, but the point there is that it will not necessarily always do that, and every year apparently it moves slightly.
But like you
it's
mentioned,
not certain, it's not fixed in accordance with what I understand to be the Islamic tradition, which is that the sun is fixed in its course. It's not. It moves.
that again.
In fact, the whole solar system.
The
is
Islamic
moving.
tradition doesn't have anything specific to say regarding that. The Quran itself could be interpreted in multiple ways.
I seem to recall reading a surah where it suggests that the sun is fixed in its course.
In its course, but it's interpreted in multiple ways.
Everything's interpreted.
But here, the point you mentioned regarding 2 plus 2 being 4 always as a fact has an external reality as well, because if we have one bottle of water here, one here and one here, it makes 3 bottles of water, and with certainty I can say that there are 3 bottles of water in front of me. So
but that is a language that we've invented to describe reality. It's not reality itself.
So saying God would be a language to describe a reality of a first cause. So the first cause...
This is where I agree with you. God is a language.
So if we say the first cause is God, the first cause is God, you would accept that?
I would accept that that's a language, that's a description that you've given
to the first cause.
To an idea. My point, as I've said to that gentleman over there, we do not know how the cosmos started. And that is where we, humanists and naturalists, end the discussion until such time as we've got evidence as to what happened. And to have language and ideas and concepts floating around in your mind, mental gymnastics, is not going to get us to the truth. We need evidence.
With that regard, if you passed, for instance, a city which had crosses and crucifix, you'll know that the majority of the people living in this city are Christians, meaning it's an inferred argument. Circumstantial evidence would lead to a certainty regarding the residents of that town. Likewise, we would say circumstantial evidence would lead to the fact, and answering your question as well, the fact that we see the observed universe and the contingent nature of the observed universe would tell us regarding that the universe has a first cause which is eternal. So with regard to your question on how certain I am regarding Islam, I would say 100% certain, because as a Muslim, I objectively look at the Quran, understood the Quran, and then objectively looked at the biography of the Prophet and looked at the objections as well. So many of these objections, in fact, overwhelming majority of these objections, I have come across and have answered in a rational way, or have read the answers in a rational way.
Right, we'll take the question from the lady there.
Part of your argument for the existence of God, you said it was the balance of well-being versus suffering, and that well-being is, takes priority over suffering, and there's more evidence for well-being. But what are you basing that statistic on? Because when you look at certain parts of the world, or even sections of our own society, there's tremendous suffering. So the balance would be more towards suffering than well-being.
With regard to your question on suffering, if those sections of society that we may observe that are suffering, most of the time you will observe that suffering is due to human causes, meaning human beings will be behind the economic suffering of certain groups. You will notice that one nation may plunder another nation and take all its wealth away. For instance, tomorrow I'm going to Africa, to Malawi and to South Africa. These are 2 nations that were plundered by human beings. Prior to that, those nations were prosperous nations. But so a lot of that suffering that's occurring in South Africa and Malawi is down to human endeavors. So that cannot be, you cannot place that suffering on the shoulders of anything else except human beings. So human beings need to take...
That showed that God did exist because it was more geared towards the well-being. You said that there was more well-being than there was suffering, so that was your example of why God...
If you look at someone's natural existence, and if they were left without any human hindering in their lives, majority of the people, for the majority of their time in their lives, will have happiness compared to sadness, meaning God created sadness without any human acquisition of that, you will notice that majority of the time they will have happiness, but humans tend to have a short memory of regarding their happy time. So if they have 300 days of happiness and 5 days of sadness, those 5 days of sadness will overwhelm the 300 days of happiness. So they will reflect over those 5 days, but they will forget the 300 days of happiness that they may have had.
It's nothing to do with God then.
I would say God does create that sadness, but how much thankfulness do we have for those 300 days? Meaning, do we ever acknowledge Him? People reject Him.
Thank God for good times, but you don't do anything about the sad times.
No, you turn to Him in the sad times.
What, He's not going to help?
He does help. Why doesn't He help?
Because you've just
I'm gonna let Guy respond to this if he wants to, and then we'll take the next question.
No, I don't think I need to say anything more
They
than
can carry on, and
the
if they
lady
want.
has said.